While I was on a business trip, I called Fiancée and heard strange noises on the background. It has obviously been several years since the incident, and I literally have never told anyone in my new life about this. Tonight I have some good wine to drink and figure I'll let my fingers do the talking. I thought I had met the perfect woman. We met in the last year of college. We met at a party and hit it off instantly. She was a beautiful blonde with sun-kissed skin, and she could have been a model. Think Kate Upton type figure. She was kind, compassionate, sympathetic, good listener, and had an active life with many friends. She liked my friends, and it was awesome over the 3 years we knew each other and how our friend groups merged. Several of our friends began dating each other. It was some of the best times of my life. I was on for a postgrad in finance and she had a degree in contractual law. This is just to say we ended up being successful in our own rights. But I'm no slouch in the looks department either. 5 feet 11 inches, 190 pounds, and like the gym. I wasn't a super athlete, but let's just say I was built. But I'm very shy and didn't have a lot of prior relationships prior to meeting her. The first evening we met, we were smitten. First night we talked all night. Then it went to texting, phone calls daily, then dates weekly. Then after a year, when I started working my new job, she moved in. I loved her family and her family loved me. Mostly her mother, as her father was standoffish, as he was to everyone. It was a whirlwind romance. After 2.5 blissful years of overseas vacations, hiking trips and luxury vacations, I proposed to her. She said yes. I was over the moon. She was doing all the planning for the wedding. We were talking about our futures together, buying a house, children, and family trips that we were going to take together, and all such things like that. Then it happened. One evening after we both get home to our apartment, she is a little distant. I think I noticed it right away, as we were always very affectionate towards each other. This would only happen about once a week for the first month after proposal, then it was more frequent. I would have been none the wiser except that I used to listen to a lot of Reddit on YouTube. So, I waited and observed. These bouts of ignoring me would only last a couple of hours, then she would be right back to normal. But after 6 months, wedding in a year, she was like this almost every night. Closeness was still great. Relationship with her parents still great, but over Thanksgiving at her parents' home in Louisville, Kentucky, we live just north of D.C., she was standoffish towards me in front of her mother. Now her mother was a very observant woman. She pulled her daughter aside to talk to her, and I could hear them arguing. After some heated but muffled words, they returned to the rest of the family and carried on like nothing was going on. I figured I could ask her about it later and did. She was not willing to talk about it and asked me to wait till we were home to discuss it. I agreed, as I loved her deeply and thought we could work through anything. Her mother was an older version of her. Same stunning looks, just a few grays in her long thick blonde hair. This is important later. Back home I asked her about it, and she was unwilling to discuss it. When pressed on it for a week, she finally confessed that a guy at her work was trying to get to know her better. She wanted to be forthcoming, so she showed me her phone, and as I looked through it I noticed that all the texts that would have happened during the time she was withdrawing from me were removed. There was nothing untoward in the texts. But I did go into her phone settings and turned on her locator on her phone, as we shared the same phone plan. And I honestly thought it would make me see that she was not doing anything wrong. Was I wrong? That second weekend after Thanksgiving she had a company Christmas party. I had planned on going but came down with food poisoning and had to back out. She had a girlfriend pick her from our apartment as they planned on drinking a lot. I had a DD for the evening. We had planned on going out all night, so I told her to have a blast and I would see her in the morning. So, as I'm puking my guts out and barely able to get off the toilet for more than 30 minutes, I grabbed my phone and watched her location. First it was a restaurant, then the venue of the company party, then a bar. None of this alarmed me until I saw her phone stop in a downtown hotel. At this point I was miserable in more ways than 3. Projectile vomiting out my mouth and now soul. I finally fell asleep due to sheer exhaustion at 2 a.m. At 7 a.m. I awoke and saw she was still at the hotel. At noon she finally comes home, and I am on the mend. She loves me up, and I asked her about the previous night without mentioning anything about knowing her locations. She talks about the restaurant, party, the bar, but then says she went to her girlfriend's house to crash for the evening. First lie. For the next 3 months she has to start working later and later, 3 to 4 days a week. As I start asking her about it, she becomes more and more defensive. I talked to her mom one evening when fiancé didn't come home until late. I asked her mom about the Thanksgiving conversation, and she admitted to me that she thought her daughter might be stepping out of our relationship because of how she read her body language. She also said that her daughter was being more and more distant with her in their weekly texting conversations. With all this speculation that was going on in my mind, I kept it to myself. 2 weeks later at work, I ended up getting a new project at my company that was going to require me to fly to the Midwest Monday through Friday for the next 5 weeks, starting in 2 weeks. It came with an increase in salary, and as I broke the news to my fiancée, she was delighted for me. I didn't think, though, that she was excited for the same reasons I was. So, I went online and ordered 4 motion-activated spy cameras for my apartment. I put one in the living room/entry area, one in the kitchen, one in our bedroom, and one looking down our hallway. They were very small and connected to the internet via a hidden network, so they couldn't be spotted on the Wi-Fi network. I secured the cams with a password and waited. On my first week out, she had girlfriends over the first 2 nights and never worked late once. The third night, a guy came over. I was enraged. I'm sitting there in my hotel room, screaming at the monitor and calling her every name in the book. Then they went all the way, first on the couch, then in our bed. She bent for ways for him that I didn't know were possible. What was the worst was, as I am watching them get it on, I call her to see how her day went. She hears her phone ringing and holds her hand up for him to stop doing it with her and answers the call. I ask why she is breathing heavy and said she was at the gym working out. As soon as the call is over, she goes right back to doing the dirty. When I got home Friday evening, I ignored her and went right to bed, and early Saturday got up and went cycling. I was so upset that I didn't even realize that I biked over 50 miles from our apartment. The furthest I had biked before was 30 miles. But that day I went 105.6 miles. Getting back absolutely exhausted, I showered. Then she and I went out that evening and had fun with our friends and had a lot to drink. Is it breakup act when the one you're going to break up with is oblivious? I was bursting inside. Heartbreak, anger, rage, feelings of betrayal all swirled around in my heart and mind. She, who used to be so attentive, was oblivious to all this. It hurt so much because I loved her so much. I finally confided in one of our mutual friends, and he told me that they all knew about it for months. I was finally told. They all felt sorry for me, but no one again said a damn thing to me. Which is why they stopped inviting us out with them. I hadn't noticed it before, but I could look back and see that about 3 months prior they gradually invited us, me less and less. So, I figured I would try and win her back. The next weekend I planned the entire weekend as a complete weekend of spoiling her in every way. Wined and dined, pampering, massages, rubs, and talking to her about future plans and about how much I loved her. I knew I was starting to break through when after her 4th glass of wine she started to cry, and I could tell the guilt was coming up to the surface. I asked her what was wrong, but she would choke up every time she tried to speak. I then told her that if she did something in her past or was having some kind of conflict in her mind that she needed to speak to me about, that I was more than willing to talk with her about it, and if forgiveness was needed then I was more than willing to forgive and move on. The only words that came out of her mouth in her was how much she loved me. It actually hurt to hear that from her, as I now had 4 separate videos of her and the other guy in our apartment getting it on. Over the next 8 weeks of traveling to the Midwest, the trips lasted for what would be 10 weeks, I recorded over 41 hours of her having closeness with what I found out was her coworker. She never worked late once while I was gone. I tried every weekend to be extra attentive, and each week she got more and more distant. After watching this for 8 weeks I was done, so I devised a 12-step getaway plan. Gather evidence, get her out of the way in order to execute my plan. I scheduled a 2-week exclusive getaway trip for us at an all-inclusive resort, Barbados. She was ecstatic. Then a week before the trip I claimed I had to back out and told her to take a friend. I knew it was over when she showed no disappointment that I couldn't go. She scheduled coworker to go with her, terminate our apartment lease. It would expire 3 days into her trip and I was the sole signature on the lease. Find a job in another town. The company I had been assisting in the Midwest had offered me a job with a slight increase in salary. Find a new place to live. I got an apartment in the above said location. When she is gone, perform the following: take her to the airport, go back home and pack all her things, same day. Saturday, get a new phone number, phone, email. Cancel all social media. Monday, separate us completely in regard to finances. Withdrew all monies from our joint accounts and then closed them. I put all her money in an envelope and packed it in her things. Monday, have the movers pack all my things up and ship it west. Take all her things to her mother's house 600 miles away. All my fiancée's belongings fit into the back and bed of my F-250 crew cab. Tuesday through Saturday. Give her mother the evidence. Start my new life. I didn't want to do anything that was illegal, so I made sure that nothing of hers was missing. It was so hard to pack all her stuff nice and neatly away. I never cried so hard in my life. I have read so many times on Reddit about SOs saying they will never do it again when caught, but they don't stop. My hope was that she would genuinely confess so we could forgive and move on. She never did. Twice she came really close, but her secret was too hard for her to reveal. Tuesday morning, I left our apartment north of DC for the last time. It took 10 hours to get to her mom's house. What happened when I got there I was not prepared for. I arrived at her mom's house around 8 in the evening. I figured she would be surprised to see me since I was coming down unannounced. Since they lived in a gated community, I had to buzz her house from the front gate, so she was waiting for me outside when I drove up. I could tell that she had been crying when I walked up to see her. I asked her what was wrong and she hugged me, bawling that she thought her husband was cheating on her with a much younger, skinnier, and prettier woman. Dumbfounded, I just held her for what was probably 10 minutes. She soaked my right shoulder with her tears and snot. When she finally composed herself, I asked if we could go in a talk. We went in and I asked where her husband was and she indicated that he said he was going fishing with his buddies at a remote cabin an hour away. Then she said, he hates fishing. She gave me all the indications that she had picked up on and apparently it had been going on for about a year. So, doing a little bit of research, we found a credit card hold charge for a 5-star hotel that was only 20 minutes away. On call later confirmed her husband was in fact there for a 4-night stay cheating with his mistress. 2 peas in a pod. I said. What? She responded. 2 peas in a pod. I said again. Your husband is cheating on you and your daughter is cheating on me. That's why I came here to drop her stuff off and move out. I showed her the evidence in a binder on screen captures I had made. After looking at the first 3 or 4 pages, she looked at me dumbfounded. We both hugged and cried for a good 30 minutes. At that point she said stop crying and looked at me and said, well, tonight there is nothing we can do about it except for you and I to knock out these 3 bottles of Moscato and Duck in every room of the house. She grabbed 2 wine glasses and a bottle of Moscato wine and walked out to their private pool deck saying, are you coming out here or are you going to get ducking revenge? Now I won't go into much detail because I don't want to get blue balls, but that night and for the next 3 days we ducked nonstop. I put myself in every hole her beautiful body could offer. I must have ended in or on her 25 plus times in that period. After those days were over, we passionately said goodbye and I drove to my new destination. She kept me informed as to everything that happened when now ex-fiancé got back. The day fiancé got back was epic. I canceled my phone the morning of the day she got back. So when the plane landed and she called for a ride, it indicated the phone was disconnected. She apparently had her lover take her home. He dropped her off and left. When she came to the door, a strange couple, new tenants, answered the door and she freaked out. I can't tell you how many times she tried to call me because again the number was no longer valid. She went to her girlfriend's to stay for a time as coworker was already married. When she called her mom in a panic, her mom told her that I had come down and dropped off all her things and mentioned that all her monies were down there as well. 600 miles away. Her mom didn't tell her that she had ducked me more in 3 days than Fiancée and I had in the last 6 months. But she did tell her that she knew that she was cheating on me, and I said I had found a new job, place to stay and new career far away from her and all the friends we had. And that her mother was separating from her father due to infidelity. Apparently she cried for days and took a week off of work. But alas, she found comfort in the arms of her married lover. Her mom never let her know where I was at. I had completely cut off that part of my life. The only link I had to that old life was Fiancée's mom. And she has kept our secret to this day. Fiancée was ghosted the most. Update. As for the timing of the events that let me leave her, a lot of it was extremely fortunate timing for the lease ending, the job search success, and the phone plan ending. Things could have gone down much differently had any of those things been different. Aftermath. My ex-fiancée's mother kept in touch with me for several months afterwards since we had a mutual loss of relationships and shared in a revenge of sorts against our SOs. However, neither of our respective SOs found out what happened between ex-fiancée's mother and I. Ex-fiancée's mother eventually came out to see me after 7 months in my new location. But much to many of you guys' disappointment, we only talked. We both actually regretted what we had done together but acknowledged that it was in the past and in the heat of the moment. Days of heat and moments. She said that her daughter knew that she, ex-fiancée's mother, knew where I was and was very upset that she would not divulge my location. She asked if she could tell ex-fiancée where I was and give her a way to contact me. But I asked that she not tell her as I was in my new life. Ex-fiancée's mother and I talked extensively about the possibility of her and her so staying together and work it out. She said her husband was extremely remorseful and came clean on everything. She said it was a lot to take in and had asked him what he was going to do to earn back her trust. He gave her all his digital passwords and let her see everything he had ever done to hurt their marriage. Ex-fiancée's mother ended up being very angry but recognized that he was actually trying to repair the marriage. She said her forgiveness to him would come in time, but the trust would take longer. What caused him to snap back into reality was that she confronted him about the affair and showed him the evidence of what his daughter had done to me. Also, ex-fiancée's mother was an amazing woman in every way imaginable. She also stated that if he went outside the marriage, then she would be allowed to do so again. He picked up on the again phrase and asked her what she meant. She told him that as soon as she found out he was cheating, that she ducked the first eligible guy she found. He was devastated. Ex-fiancée's mother said they cried a lot and agreed to separate for a short time to give each other time to articulate their thoughts and see if they both wanted to fight for the marriage. Eventually they went to marriage counseling and are still together as of May 2020. As for ex-fiancée, well, she was devastated by what I had done to her. When she finally went to her parents to gather her things, she was shown the evidence of the affair and was extremely embarrassed. Ex-fiancée's mother had to edit the binder so that when her father saw it, he would not see pictures of father should not see of his daughter. Regardless, ex-fiancée was crushed. She did not find out that her mother had my contact information until months later. Ex begged her mother for my information and it put quite the strain on their relationship, but her mother also told her that if she had tried to find and or contact me, that all the evidence would be released forever on the internet by me. This insistence of ex-fiancée to divulge my information is what prompted her to come and see me. She was also upset about her parents having trouble in their marriage. According to her, ex-fiancée was depressed for several months and sought counseling. She had immediately broke off the affair with coworker once she returned from her parents' place in Louisville, Kentucky, and looked to find a new place of employment. Recently, December 2019, I found out that she was married and has 2 beautiful twin daughters with a stand-up guy and still lives in the DC area. According to her mother, she now worked from home and was loving her new life. I'm glad that she was able to right her foundering ship and have a happy start in life again. I recently destroyed all the incriminating evidence I had on ex-fiancée as I didn't want to be that guy who would hold her hostage for the rest of her life. I did ask her mother to let ex-fiancée know this. If I had been on the potential receiving end of that information bomb, then it would have caused me many sleepless nights. As for myself, well, let's just say I am satisfied with my current life. Ex-fiancée's mother and I talked every few months initially, but now we talk once, maybe twice a year. Usually it's a short note updating each other on life's little changes. The only question that remains unanswered for me is that if ex-fiancée's mother and her husband were able to repair their marriage, would it have been possible for ex-fiancée and I to have repaired ours? But I never gave it the chance. One can only speculate. Our lives are on vastly different planes now. Toxic girlfriend cheated 'cause she's obsessed with making out, got dumped, but now wants to fix it. I met a girl on a dating website while on vacation. Going on a dating website while on vacation sounds like a bad idea because you're in a different state than the one you live in. I started talking to this girl and our conversations were the most amazing, flowed so smoothly, and never ran out of conversations to talk about. I had never experienced a connection like this one. For a month we talked every single day, long texts, and talked on the phone. After a month had passed, I went to see her finally. I was super excited to see her in person. There were instant butterflies, my heart was filled with joy, goosebumps. We spent 3 amazing days together. We explored cities in her state, went to a cool museum, ate great food, and watched movies in bed. As I dropped her off at her house to go back home to my state 3 hours away, we cried in each other's arms. I told her I loved her. I have never fallen in love before or even felt love. This feeling was the most amazing feeling I've ever felt in my life. The entire drive home I was in complete awe. During 8 months we talked every single day, every hour, long texts, calls every other day. I saw her once a month. She would drive or fly to see me and I would fly to drive and see her. We would stay in hotels because we both lived with our parents. The hotels were getting pricey. I was paying for the hotels, things we would do, amusement parks, food, etc. Thinking back, this was a bad idea to pay for everything. I kind of had this feeling that I was supposed to pay for things. If I could go back, I would have made a 50-50 agreement. The first 8 months were really good, but slowly she started to seem to have anger issues/breakdowns of crying and emotional issues. At one point she told me she didn't love me and punched me in the chest. I broke up with her after that trip. We talked about her anger issues. She thought it was the birth control she was taking at the time. And she was going to quit birth control to see if that was the issue. During the 6 months of us being broken up, we were amazing friends, talked every day like usual. I saw her 3 times out of the 6 months. She was her amazing self, the side of her I first fell in love with. She was happy and things felt magical again. We got back together as a couple again and the first 3 months were amazing. We both agreed to see each other more often, twice a month. Things slowly took a turn once again with her anger issues and we realized that it was a bipolar/emotional issues. She didn't want to see a doctor for it and I realized it was just part of her personality and it was something I would have to try to help her with. I was slowly walking on eggshells, afraid to make her mad. If she didn't get her way she would get super upset. I made sure to plan tons of fun things to do each day. During our trips I would write the ideas down weeks before to make sure our time was occupied and she wouldn't sink into her anger. The 3-year mark, at this time it had been rough. There was a lot of ups and downs with her anger issues, the long distance. I realized we had to make a plan to start to move in together. We started talking about moving in and future plans. Things seemed like they were going good. The 3-year mark I found out that during the entire relationship of us being together she was cheating on me with multiple different partners. She told me she was escorting for money and sleeping with guys. I asked her why. She told me it was a sex obsession she had and she was doing it for the money as well. She had a shopping obsession and spent all of her money on clothes, etc. My heart was broken into a million pieces. I couldn't believe that the entire time she was cheating on me and betrayed me. I felt like we had amazing love and she had traded lust for love. For 3 months after finding out she was cheating on me, we stayed friends. We talked on the phone every night for hours. She would apologize every phone call. We would watch movies over FaceTime. During the 3 months, every time I talked with her I felt good inside, but also a ton of pain and anger about the cheating. I experienced a bad nightmare and night terrors of her cheating on me, and it was super rough. My family and friends told me it was unhealthy to keep talking with her, so I went no contact for 7 months. During those 7 months were some of the roughest months. I missed her like crazy. I fell into the worst depression, hopelessness, and anxiety/pain. I always felt like, what if I gave her another chance? Would she change her ways and never cheat again like she had told me? After 7 months of not talking to her, I fell into a really bad depression. I felt like I didn't want to keep living without her. I reached out to her, and she came to see me the next day. We got to a hotel and we talked about everything and what she had done to me and the pain she caused me. She apologized about everything and it felt like she was truly sorry, and we cried in each other's arms. We made a plan for me to move in with her and her parents in her state. I had to quit my job that was really good and took a while to get and move up in. It felt like it was worth it to have this second chance with her. I gave her a pre-engagement ring/promise ring and told her in 1 year we would get married and I would save up for a great wedding of our dreams. We planned to move out of the parents' house for 1 to 2 years, but she didn't like the idea of leaving her parents' house at first and wanted to give it a full 2 years. We are both 30 years old. I wanted to try to move into our own place sooner than 2 years. I moved into her room. She had tons and tons of stuff and the only space we could make was a suitcase worth of clothes for me to store in her room. The rest of my stuff I had to leave at my parents' house. Paid her parents rent and contributed food and cleaning supplies and helped clean. I started putting in tons of job applications every day. She wanted me to drive her to and from work every day and drop her off at lunch every day. Her work was about 40 minutes away, so the commute was 3 hours each day to drop off lunch, pick up. Slowly, after 2 weeks of driving her to work, it became too much money in gas and time out of the day traveling. I told her my concerns about the driving. She was upset that I didn't drive her to work every morning and when she came back home from work. I slowly started to drive her again every other day to make her happy. Her anger issues were starting to get out of control again. She wasn't happy with her job and would be upset when she would get off work. I tried to comfort her, take her to fun places to cheer her up and take her out to eat. After 30 days had passed, I found out she was cheating on me again with one of her co-workers after work. When she drove herself to work, she would be hours late each day. She finally admitted she was sleeping with a co-worker, and I asked her, how could you do this to me after everything we have been through? She said she had to get it out of her system and it was a one-time thing. It was the adrenal rush, as it seemed, for her to cheat on me. I broke up with her once again and moved back to my state. For 2 weeks I went no contact, once again fell into a terrible depression, nightmares, night terrors of her cheating on me with her coworker. Not being able to sleep for days at a time. I talked with her a couple days ago and told her how much pain she had caused me. She kept apologizing, but I can't accept her apology, and it seems like she will never change her ways of cheating. She has sex obsession. It's been a couple days of no contact. She's been reaching out to me, but I feel like no contact might be the best. I'm afraid to fall into a terrible depression again. The last few nights I only got a couple hours of sleep, terrible terror dreams, constantly thinking about her and missing her. How could I miss her after everything I've been through? It seems I still have love for her, but I know the relationship is toxic for both of us.